Son. Son, who is right at the back in the red shirt, and he's going to wave. Son, wave! Wave, just wave. No, that's Ray. Son, wave! Wave. Say hi. So everybody, that's Son. He's the local chapter director. A few announcements. Thanks to Ray at the Cove for sponsoring this brilliant, beautiful place. Thanks for all of you to turn up on a Friday night instead of going for beers. And thanks very much to Roger Egan III, who is the founder of Redmart, the CEO of Redmart. Let's put our hands together and welcome Roger Egan III. So a little bit about you, Roger. Let's start tonight. Tell us a bit about your entrepreneurial journey and how you landed up in sunny Singapore.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming out to hear our story. I am from New Jersey originally, and I went to University of Pennsylvania, undergrad, studied economics, then followed the herd into investment banking. Seemed like the only choice at the time. Didn't like it very much. Quit my job pretty early and felt like I couldn't use my creativity, so I started my first venture, which was an events planning company. And in our first event, we earned more than kind of my investment banking salary and bonus, so I said, I'm going to keep on going with this, and grew the company and started many more events in New York City. After that, did a couple small startups, some moderate successes, some colossal failures where I learned a lot. My only other real job is I went back into finance to work in Omega Capital in Madrid, Spain. I did that for 2 years, working in the hedge fund division. Got the entrepreneurial itch again, came back to the States and co-founded Integro Insurance Brokers. That was the largest VC deal in the US, raised over $320 million, started 12 offices and 400 people, so it was a very big startup / private equity play. While I was there, I created and launched a new insurance product called Head Shield. Got $250 million backing from large US insurance companies to protect hedge fund investors against fraud. And shortly thereafter, Mr. Bernard Madoff came out in July 2008, which really helped our sales. I've always wanted to get into e-commerce. That's a profitable company today. I tried to raise money during the financial crisis, and it was next to impossible. So I said, why not wait this out in business school and hopefully find a partner? And that's what brought me to Singapore. I went to INSEAD to get my MBA and met my partner Vikram there. So we got started on the idea pretty early. The raw idea was just e-commerce. And I'm from New York, so I'm used to ordering from places like Fresh Direct, my groceries. So as a busy student, I tried to order from some of the local competition, which I won't name, but the experience was not that great, and we saw a huge opportunity. So the ideas kind of became fine-tuned into now grocery e-commerce. We said, what can we do to sort of change this into something that's a little bit more disruptive, or what kind of edge can we have? And what we decided to do is make a platform for manufacturers to sell direct to consumer, and sort of cut out the retail middleman. And we've been developing that platform ever since. Spent the whole year at INSEAD building out the idea. Graduated in December 2010. We got Unilever on board by the time we graduated, after about 10 meetings of convincing them to support us. So we said, let's go for it. It took us about 9 months to meet with suppliers. We get about 1,800 SKUs or products to sell on the site, build the site. I don't have a tech background, so we had to outsource that at first, and I can tell any non-technical founders how we sort of did that and got started without a technical co-founder, which everyone likes to talk about all the time. So we basically, put in some of our own money, didn't take salary for a year or year and a half. We got our INSEAD professors, some of them to invest, and some friends, family, and fools. And we got started. We launched in October 2011. And since then, we've been growing over 30% month over month. So there's obviously a lot of demand for this service in Singapore because I'll be honest, our initial offering was pretty horrible. We didn't have any good selection or anything.
So, Roger, I hear you've raised funds, not just once, but many times over. I'm quite certain there are quite a number of entrepreneurs here who would really like to find out how did you raise that much money?
So we've raised close to $5 million now. Like I said, I think the easiest way to get started is if you can kind of commit your time, and if you have any money, it's even more helpful. Just get something started. People, feel better about investing in you. And one thing that I found out later was that it was better to go to, some people who weren't friends and family first to get their buy-in and approval. So we went to a few INSEAD professors. And the reason that was helpful is when you do go to family and friends, it's kind of a emotional type conversation. And if they have sort of that stamp of approval from someone else that they know would not invest unless they really believed in the idea, it kind of helps that conversation. So we got that stamp of approval first. After that, one of my classmates actually was the first employee of Skype at INSEAD. He was director of strategy. He tweeted about us, hey, my buddies are starting this company in Southeast Asia, Redmart. And actually the co-founder of Skype saw the tweet and said, hey, I'm investing in Southeast Asian companies, so can you please introduce me? Of course, we had our first conversation over Skype, and he was in Estonia. And it went pretty well, I thought, but could not tell. And eventually, he ended up investing, and he's since invested 3 times over our various rounds. So getting a super angel like that on board is obviously very helpful. He made so many connections, and he's a very savvy investor, a very smart guy who's been incredibly helpful, especially in the formative days of Redmart. And since then, we've basically targeted entrepreneurs that have made it. We love them as investors because they understand what we're going through. They're the most helpful. So recently, the CEO of Property Guru here in Singapore just invested in the CTO, Steve Mahuish and Ayani. So those guys have been incredibly helpful. Golden Gate Ventures invested here. Maybe some of you know Vinny. We have a kind of an all-star list of investors, so it's been really great so far.
Great. I think one of the most important things about raising funds is really about getting a good team on board. And we noticed that you've got really this great team. So how do you meet them, and how do you make them share your vision?
That's a good question. Usually, I guess the conventional wisdom says to kind of go through your network to make sure that you have employees that one of your friends can vouch for, and it makes it easier that way. Unfortunately, when I came to Singapore, most of my network is in the States, so I didn't have that. So we had to really build it out from scratch. And what we did is in the initial stages, the first employees, we had to sort of take a chance on, to be honest. And once we found good people, then we kind of used their network to hire. So one of the critical hires that we made was Rajesh Lingappa, who is chief architect at Bubble Motion, which is a Sequoia-backed company. And I think one of the important things that I learned in trying to find, and now he's a co-founder, this was very early days, one of the best things I learned about kind of hiring this technical engineers or co-founders was that you really need to find out what motivates them. Most of the time it's not money, it's more a really big technical challenge. And so the way I sold it to him is that I said, you know, we're going to build all of our logistics ourselves. We're going to build an e-commerce platform. We're going to build iPhone apps, iPad apps. And he just sort of smiled and said, awesome, this sounds like the challenge I'm looking for. And I think that's what sold him on the idea.
Okay, a lot of people are talking about, sorry, can you guys hear? Sorry. A lot of people are talking about going to the States, going to the Valley, and here you are coming from the States into Singapore. What do you see in Singapore?
I see a lot of opportunity. Like I said, this would be a very difficult company to start in the States. I'd be competing against Amazon and FreshDirect and many others. Those type of companies, e-commerce companies, don't exist here, which was part of the draw. Everyone always says Singapore's a small market. I disagree. For our products category, at least, it's a $5.2 billion US market. That's non-perishable household essentials and daily consumables. So the opportunity is huge. Everyone's a potential customer, right? So, that's, I guess, opportunity is the big reason. Then we looked into the demographics. We saw a busy, group of people who value their free time. Not many people had cars. Logistically, it's very simple, small, densely populated, and it's the right type of customer that values their time and convenience.
So what are your plans for the next 1 to 3 years, Roger?
So we're building out, I think the most important thing we've learned through this journey is that e-commerce is not about a website and a beautiful iPhone app and things like that. The core of it is in logistics and warehousing, and that is very, very difficult. We now have a fleet of 10 vans, one of which brought the refreshments in the back today from Redmart. And it's not an easy problem to solve. Delivery route optimization algorithms. We're building a lot of technology and infrastructure and logistics and warehousing. So I think, that's our biggest challenge. We've been fortunate, I think, a lot of times in a startup, customer acquisition is very difficult. We've been fortunate to have, I guess there was a lot of pent-up demand, but now our challenge is scaling this operation.
Okay, I hear you are launching an iPhone app.
Yeah, and so just to finish off on kind of plans, we are planning to get it right here in Singapore first. I think it's, one of the advice from many of our advisors is don't try to go into another city before you really have all of your systems built and integrated here. It's too hard, it's too much of a distraction, and the bandwidth is very low on our management team right now. So we'll probably be finishing that off here this year and then looking to international expansion in 2014. iPhone app, yeah, it's been developed. I can show you guys a prototype. Come up and talk to me after this. We are launching very soon, and you'll probably see something in the press about that.
All right, I'm going to open the floor for some questions, but before I do, let's get a feel of the crowd today. I noticed there are a lot of people at the back. By show of hands, how many of you here are entrepreneurs and have started your business at least once? 20%, or are we all shy?
Wow.
How many of you are students? They're usually at the back, that's right. How many of you are aspiring entrepreneurs, thinking about it but not quite there yet? Okay, that's quite a number of you. And visitors, observers, professionals, technical co-founders, etc. Can we have a show of hands of the rest of you? Where are you? All disappeared. Anyways, okay, let's open the floor for questions. Who would like to ask the first question? I'll run up.
Thank you. Roger, I think this is a really encouraging moment because I guess we are kind of in the same boat. I noticed also that there's a lot of saying that you have to have domain knowledge for investors who really want to invest in you, and obviously groceries was not part of your plan before you entered this life. So how did you convince the investors that you really can pull this off?
Good question. Yeah, we had no experience in retail, e-commerce, technology, or groceries. So what we did is we built a network of people surrounding us that did have a lot of experience in this. One of the early people I reached out to was Jason Ackerman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Fresh Direct in New York, which is the largest online grocery business in the United States. He is now an advisor, and I probably asked about 5 times before he finally agreed. So persistence is the key there. And we have other people at, for example, an investor and advisor, Boon Ling Yi. She was the commercial director of Tesco China. She's Singaporean. She was before commercial director of Tesco Thailand. Commercial director, for those not in the industry, basically means the head of Tesco China. So obviously, she knows a lot about the grocery retail business. And she's working very closely with us. So we've had to learn a lot of things the hard way, and we've definitely made a ton of big mistakes along the way, but we've learned quickly, and I think that's the key. For example, with our first warehouse, be honest, it was pretty much a mess, and we didn't know about warehouse management, but my co-founder, who's heads operations, Vikram, did a great job, and I can put him toe-to-toe with anyone in the operations industry now, and he's just learned incredible now. So guidance from people who know. For technology, what was difficult for me is I didn't know how to assess tech talent, right? I couldn't tell who was a good CTO and who wasn't. But everyone here has someone in their network who is in that world that can help you vouch for those people. So I had them kind of screen resumes for me and go to the first couple interviews, and I started to learn what were we looking for. And then also helped to have the former head of engineering at Skype to interview your CTO, and I participated in that interview, and it was a big grilling. So that's sort of how we did it.
Any other questions? I know, the mic's gonna go. Why the mic tonight? Isn't it? Everyone hungry?
Come on, guys.
Okay, we've got a question.
Well, this is really like follow up to what you were saying earlier. Like, how does someone that doesn't have this is really a follow up to what you were saying earlier. How did you, found a team to build the tech before you had a team? So you were saying you're gonna.
Yeah, I'd say one more point on that is don't let it slow you down. We just got started, and we used an agency, made some mistakes, never built an e-commerce site before. We used an off-the-shelf system called Magento, which I think is, for anyone in e-commerce, a great way to get started. We're experiencing limitations now, and that's why we're building our own e-commerce platform. But you can just get started. And once you're a going concern, once you start getting a few customers, you can get some press, you get an investor, it's much easier to convince people to come and join you, right? You have something that they can really visualize. This is a company and a vision that I can buy into. So I would say, rather than just trying so hard and spinning your wheels trying to get that right person on board, if you can get started without it, go for it. And that's what we did. And it was much easier for us to attract someone like Rajesh after a few months and some customers and revenue coming in the door.
So I have a question. So what was your core team, like number of people when you first started, not including founders, and what kind of responsibilities did they have?
Okay. So it was just Vikram me and a warehouse guy and one admin person in the beginning. So we did everything from cataloging to packaging to delivery. We tried to outsource our last mile delivery to a company here, I won't mention the name. Horrible experience. You pay a lot for customers. Missing delivery the first time means they're never coming back. So it was difficult. So we just got a van and said, how difficult can this be? And we started doing all the deliveries ourselves. First of all, customers couldn't believe, seeing the founder show up and deliver and get packages. But we used it as a great way to get customer feedback, right? You have you can send out all the surveys in the world, but in a 5-minute conversation, you can find out exactly what your customer wants and much more efficiently. So we started delivering, and then obviously with one van, we couldn't do all of the deliveries all throughout Singapore, right? Because sometimes people we provide 2-hour delivery windows. It's free delivery over $75. So we couldn't hit, the East Coast and then the West Coast at the same time. So we started calling customers and saying, hey, do you mind if we deliver a little earlier today? And they're like, wow, that's great customer service. And it was really because we had no choice. We couldn't deliver at the same time. So that was what we had to do. And you just kind of get by, and you do a lot of things that aren't scalable and won't work in the long run. But you just provide the initial customers with an unbelievably great experience, and they start doing your marketing for you. Half the traffic to Redmart now comes from organic or direct, which means there's a lot of word of mouth going on. So we take the approach of just servicing our initial group of customers who put up with a crappy website and missed delivery times, and we're kind of the early adopters that just wanted to support us and just service them as well as we could, and it's paid off big time.
And your user retention has gone up from there?
Yeah, so our retention is extremely high for e-commerce sites, which makes that sort of, the equation of customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value. The lifetime value is very high in this industry. Our customers order on average 1.5 times a month. That's another part of the reason why we got into this category, because it's the highest touch point with the customers.
So one more question, which will be useful for the rest of the people here. So you started as an online business, but obviously you're going to have a presence in mobile right now.
Yeah.
So when you're doing online, obviously it's the SEOs and things like that for user acquisition. So when you're in mobile, are there any strategies that you would use and kind of cross promote your mobile customers as well as your online customers?
Yeah, so the reason why we're going mobile is, first of all, we see about 25% of our traffic coming there, so that was a huge hint that we should be doing this. And we're all about convenience, right? And the most convenient thing is to not have to go to your computer to actually, place an order. You want to be able to do it whenever and wherever. And we're also trying to change behavior. There's less than 1% of Singapore shopping for groceries online right now. So we sort of saw, one of the habits that people have is they write down a list and then they take it to the store, right?
I see that.
So, and then some people put their list in a phone. So one of the key features on our iPhone app is a shopping list. And you just can kind of add to your shopping list and cross things out and add to your cart and check out, while you're in the MRT or waiting for a doctor's appointment or anything. And people usually tend to order a lot of the same things over and over again. So once you have that list, you can see, I'm out of Diet Coke. Instead of having to wait and remember it, you always have your phone with you. You can just add it to your list right there or your cart right there, and then check out whenever you hit 75 for free delivery. So it's all about convenience. In terms of reaching people on the mobile space, we're basically going to launch to a small group of people, and we've asked some of our customers to volunteer to beta test, and that's kind of the phase we're in now. We'll obviously make it available on the site, and anyone who comes to the site from an iPhone, which will be the first app that we launch, we'll see the app available for download. We'll try to incentivize that with discounts. That always works. So customer acquisition in our business, you can try to tell people about your value proposition. Oh, this is so convenient, and you don't have to carry stuff, and don't have to wait in line, and you can just do this all from home. But it doesn't really get across the way it does when someone actually tries your business, your service, right? When they try it, it really hits home how much easier it is. So you want to give them incentive. So we give pretty significant discount for your first order, and people try it, and then only do they realize the value proposition. So that's sort of the strategy there.
Any questions?
I find that I've been running around for about 3 years, trying to get the business started, and I find that in Singapore it's pretty difficult because the first idea I had was actually to go green, where buildings itself, where the lighting itself, most of the lighting itself can actually reduce by about 30%. But when I approach people on that idea, I find that not many people are receptive to it. They are always back to old ideas. When the thing is running well, nobody wants to change. So it is very difficult to get it changed. But after I failed on that, I realized that there is what we call facilities management around. So I approached facility management to see how they feel about the ideas. And I realized that they are also not receptive to change. Although Singapore itself, they say that you should go into all these things. But the people are not willing to change. And unless the government forces them with fines, they are not prepared to do it. But there are few buildings that are actually receptive. So we start on pilot scheme. When we did a pilot scheme, I find that when they find that the ideas is good, they copy it. Instead of letting you do it, they let you do the pilot scheme, and thereafter they just do it, or they give it to their people to do it, their own network. So basically, I feel that when you're small, a small board, it's very difficult to get it started. But in order to get it big, you need finance. Because once you have finance, so basically you must be up to you must have a certain, let's say you want to start in business, you must be up to certain size before you can get it started. And that is where the financing comes in. How is it possible to meet with those venture capitalists? Or because I find it very difficult to get into their network.
Okay. The question was sort of, if I can rephrase, was basically you're saying that you think you need a certain kind of going concern to even get the attention of people to try your service out, and getting investment you think is important to getting there. Is that basically it? And how do you do that?
Yes.
I'd say I disagree a little bit. I don't think you need such significant investment up front. And I think, for example, our business is very capital intensive, but we started off with a very small amount of money. We had a 3,000 square foot warehouse, and that was including our office. We only ordered about 5, 6 of all the SKUs that we bought. So you can get a very long way on a very small amount of money and just get the thing started. It's much easier. It's much harder to do that in e-commerce than in pure software tech company. But we still did it for very, very cheap. And I'm talking, the total amount raised in the beginning was probably like 200,000 for including all of our warehouse and inventory and everything. So I think you can get something started for less than you think,
So
and then you just have to make sure that your offering is so much better than what already exists that there's going to be some group of people who want to try it.
let's say when we started about 2 years ago, you are talking about $200,000. With the rental that's gone up, with the labor cost that's gone up, we will probably be talking about 300,000 to 400,000 just to start a business. Where most of the people around here, when we feel like when we want to start a business, we do not have that amount of money.
Right, I think, you know, you can get started, I mean, so this was over time, right? I mean, we even had less than that in the beginning, but you can start to build and then raise as you go. And I'd say it's not just kind of a big bang. You have to sort of, you know, show some progress, build a prototype, you know, get some customers if you can, or even give it people the product for free, but just show people that they're willing to use it. And then you can start raising more and more money. In e-commerce, you have to sort of build a critical mass of people that will be able to service people, because we're competing against multi-billion-dollar companies, right? Here in Singapore, it's Dairy Farm and NTUC, FairPrice. So you need that critical mass, but you don't need it all at once. And if you can show some progress, you can continue raising along the way, and actually that's the better way to do it, because your valuation will go up and you'll get diluted less.
Because I feel that, let's say if I want to get a business going, there are certain products that's actually very good, but because the brand is there, so in order not for the brand to be known, we probably have to OEM the thing itself. So when we OEM itself, we will probably be talking about container load coming in. So we are talking about $500,000 to $1 million. And we know that it's a good product. So let's say assuming that you need $1 million, how do you get the attention of the financial people to help you? And for $1 million, we are talking about beginning stage.
So what was the product?
Energy saving.
So through how was the energy savings?
Okay, I'll give you an example of one which I'm looking at now.
Yeah.
It's basically it's a kind of spray, where once you spray onto the car itself, you'll find that the car itself will be dust free for 1 year.
Okay.
Yet at the same time, dust free, and when water splash onto the screen itself, you don't see water at all. You just brush it off. But most important thing itself is that when you're in the car itself, under the sun, it reduces heat by about 5 degrees.
And you already have this designed and ready.
Yes.
I mean, so that should be enough, right? You can go to the investors with a prototype and show them how it works.
It's not mine.
Oh, okay.
So you have to OEM. So basically, when you OEM it, the thing itself, it means you buy under your own branding.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you have a prototype, it should be enough to show investors, and that should be more than enough, actually. I guess my suggestion would be to, rather than have a slide deck, we just had the first few pages of our website mocked up, not even built yet, and that was much more powerful than going with a, just a PowerPoint presentation. People can visualize what you're talking about. And I'd also say very early stages, I think having a good graphic designer to be part of making that mock-up or whatever prototype you're going to make is really important. The visual kind of portrayal of your product is hugely important in getting people to see that to really visualize what you're trying to build. So I would say that investment is worth it.
Let's get some questions from the rest of the floor. Is there any other question? Can we pass the mic further?
You mentioned that what the impetus for you to decide to do this was your own experience in trying to order groceries online here in Singapore.
I think it works now. Yeah.
Okay, so you had problems with ordering groceries when you first got here, and that was sort of the impetus for you to go down this path. I noticed whether large e-commerce or small e-commerce businesses in Singapore, it seemed like the whole experience of ordering, receiving the goods, it just seems broken. Do you find some fundamental sort of flaws in e-commerce in Singapore that you feel need to be addressed? Or if you have some sort of general ideas when other people are interested in e-commerce, what needs to be fixed and can be addressed in Singapore in general?
Yes, I have very strong opinions about this. So, what's not here that's in the US, for example, is a strong logistics. I mean, they have strong logistics for sort of big companies and, especially with the port here and large shipments, containers and all that stuff. But e-commerce fulfillment and delivery is different from normal logistics companies, and third-party logistics companies aren't used to e-commerce yet. So we found we wanted to, we thought we would be able to outsource some of this in the beginning because we didn't know much about it. But we quickly realized that neither did they, and we better do it ourselves and learn it because this is the core of the business. Now, not every small e-commerce company can do this at scale right from the beginning. That was sort of the good part about our product category, is because there's lots of people who want these products, and we can build up a good amount of revenue quickly to make that delivery density work for our last mile delivery. But we've actually had a lot of e-commerce companies here come up to us and say, can we put our stuff in your warehouse and you deliver it for us? And we're like, wow, that's a decent business idea. So that might be something we go into in the future, because it's just very difficult, and we know how difficult it is. There's nobody that really does it well in this part of the world. And for some kind of niche e-commerce companies, it's hard to do that themselves because they just don't have the scale to pay for it. And so that's something that we're actually looking into.
It's a question from the front.
Hello? So what was your customer feedback mechanism back when you started and now as well?
So like I said, we used to do the deliveries. So we would just ask people. In the beginning, it was just 27 of my friends from INSEAD who ordered. And they said, dude, your product selection sucks, and I wouldn't market at all. And we're like, okay. So we didn't market hardly at all in the first few months because, everyone was just like, this isn't cutting it. We added thousands of products, just spent all day meeting with supplier after supplier. Every hour had a meeting, and my partner was doing the same. And we finally had a pretty decent selection, about 4,000 products after about 4 months. So it was a lot of cataloging and photographing and uploading the products to the site. Then we started our first marketing campaign, and somehow through word of mouth we were even growing during that period. But the first marketing campaign we ran was in the honeycombers here in Singapore, for those of you who know it, and we grew 90% that month. Then we ran into capacity issues and realized that this business isn't all about marketing and getting customers, but you have to be able to service them well. So we had to hire a new warehouse guy, we had to hire another driver, get another van, and that's sort of how we built, and we built capacity as we've gone along. Actually, you have to build it a little bit in advance. So how do we get customer feedback now? Our customer service department is actually one of what we feel the most important departments in Redmart. I think customer service is lacking in this part of the world compared to the West. So I don't know if I strongly recommend everyone here who wants to get into e-commerce or entrepreneurship in general to read the book Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos. It's required reading at Redmart. And they sort of said, let's make customer service, instead of a cost center, let's make it more of a marketing channel. And rather than get off the phone as quickly as possible to save costs, he said stay on the phone as long as you want, just to help the customer out. And we've sort of taken that approach. So we get tons of feedback through that channel, and we have a way of capturing it in a CRM, and then we can use it to fix technology issues, to change the way we do delivery. We get feedback on the site. It's all captured there, and then we regularly run surveys. Those are helpful. Give discounts out to your customers for participating in a survey, and interviews. I think that's the best thing. When we first started Redmart, our user experience person was actually from New York, came here and she's like, I want to go visit the houses of all the different types of customers you guys have. And there's a lot you learn from doing that, right? We went to some local Singaporeans' houses, we went to some expat houses, and how she wanted to look into the cupboards and see how people bought, how much did they store in their kitchen, how much do they order at a time, who does the ordering, is it the maid, you know, and all these things you can learn a ton about. So I'd suggest interviews are great in the beginning.
Hello. Hi, Roger. Just wanted to get your thoughts on how did you value your company at the initial stage when you were talking to investors before you had any revenue coming in, and how would you value your company now? And going forward?
Very highly. I'd say, so we used an instrument called a convertible note in the beginning. For those of you not familiar, it's basically a loan to the company, and the investor gets a discount to the valuation established at Series A, or your first kind of institutional round. The good part about a convertible note is you don't have to establish a valuation. You can sort of raise it as a loan and you wait for an institutional investor later to establish a valuation. And it converts into equity at a discount to whatever that valuation is. So I think it's a great instrument for companies that don't have a lot of operating history or revenue to just get off the ground. Because, you know, Paul Graham from Y Combinator said this, it's just, you know, the two hardest things when you're raising money early stage is getting investors to agree on a valuation, and having, especially if it's more than one. And the other thing is that, you know, there's this chicken and egg problem, right? You really, whenever you go to visit investors, and this happened to us too, they always have, one of the first questions they ask you is, who else is investing, right? You're like, why don't you just invest so I can tell the next person that you're invested and we don't have this problem anymore. But that's the way it is. It's human psychology, whatever it is. It's very difficult to get the first person in. And the way the convertible note kind of combats that problem is that the first person in gets a bigger discount, and the discount goes down over time. So the early kind of investors get rewarded more handsomely for their taking on more risk.
Okay, let's have one final question. Oh, we still have time. Okay, go ahead. 3 more final questions then.
Right. All right. So first of all, I just want to say I'm a fan of you guys in the sense that I started to brick and mortar businesses before and failed by this spectacularly. So I really wish you guys all the best. So I'm rooting for you guys.
Thank you.
That's why. Question is really simple. Do you think you guys are paving the way for some of the bigger boys to follow suit to the e-commerce market?
You mean some of the brick and mortar companies to follow us?
The other supermarket chains and such. Do you think you guys are paving the way to make it easier for the competition?
You know, a lot of people ask about that, you know, whether that you need to educate the customer base, and one company spends all their money on customer acquisition for the next company to just take advantage of that. But the way that we're building our customer base, I don't think that will happen, because we're sort of, like I said, servicing them very well, and they're spreading word of mouth, and it's a lot of organic growth. So we're not just blowing money on marketing and just trying to, you know, go to the masses and waste money and do that. So I think it's a sustainable way to build the business. And yes, I think, you know, the more success we have, the more attention we'll get from bigger players with a lot more money than us. But this is the typical entrepreneurial thing, right? You know, you're always going to have competition, and a lot of times they're going to be bigger and have more resources than you, and you just have to be quicker, more nimble, more innovative. Don't pay attention to what what your competition is doing, because you'll only be as good as them if you do that. You just have to kind of think for yourself, and that's what one of the cultural things we really try to enforce at Redmart is we don't care what everyone else is doing. Learning from Apple and Steve Jobs, just kind of pay attention to what we want to do and figure out the best solution for ourselves, and that's, I think, the way to go. I think brick and mortar is very different from e-commerce. Sometimes I think the management teams are set up in brick and mortar to maximize the profit per square foot in the store and store layouts, whereas ours is all about technology and warehouse management and last mile logistics. So it's a different skill set, and I'd say if you asked any of the engineers that work at Redmart, we now have a pretty big team, would they go and work for brick and mortar? I think they find it less sexy, and to work for kind of a bureaucratic big company, as opposed to seeing the impact of their development right away and really feeling like they're building something. We're probably up for a big battle in the future, but I think we have the team to pull it off.
And there's an opportunity for acquisition, right? So is that in the line?
I don't know if I can comment on that. We're trying to build something bigger, we're not looking to try to flip this. That's been too much work, to be very honest. Just wouldn't be willing to do that anytime soon. So we're more in it for the long run.
Thanks, Roger. All the best.
Thanks.
Momo?
My question is, we know that the big boys are in there, they have more money and more resources. So my question would be, what are you currently doing, or what do you plan to do to differentiate yourself from the NTUC, the giant, to at least have a USP?
Yeah, so like I said, technology. We have an unbelievably talented set of engineers who are building, not only the warehouse and fulfillment technology, but also last mile delivery technology, delivery route optimization, all these things that are actually pretty difficult to get right. We're really focused on that area. So that's where we're trying to differentiate. We've, also, in terms of product selection, we try to find the best merchandisers to really know the trends in the market. What do the customers want? I think a lot of times in big companies, when they're trying to maximize the profit per square foot, they often make decisions that are based on, how to get more margin and things like that. I think that's a very different mentality than at Redmart, where we listen to what the customer wants, and then we try to make the economics work after that. It's a different kind of mindset.
My question is, how do youngsters look for investors when you have no connections? Do you have to have a personal connection to some investors, or you just come knocking on doors?
So the question was how to find investors when you don't have any connections to any of them.
Yes.
First, I'd say I doubt that you don't have any connections to anyone. If you look in your network, you can probably find someone who can give you an introduction to someone. So building out your network, I think, is important. Going to some investor cold who doesn't know you is often not going to work. They just get flooded with too many deals, and they probably aren't going to pay attention. So you need to find someone who knows someone. But what I'm saying is I think that you probably can. I think anyone can. I would leverage your network for that.
Sorry, just my last question. I've stayed in China for the last 10 years, and I must say, coming back to to Singapore late last year, I was just totally shocked that there is no e-commerce site here that caters for groceries or baby items, etc. I mean, in China, like, there's like tons and tons of it, and you know, every day I shop online, whether it's for groceries, for diapers, for whatever that I need in the household. So in your idea, when you were, you know, thinking in your mind you want to do groceries, did you have to go through like pivots? You know, did you actually pivot in the initial days, or were you just like groceries message?
No, we didn't pivot. We did think groceries, and that's it. Like I mentioned, you know, a lot of people told us things about Singapore. We often wondered, why is there less than 1% shopping online? And we believed ourselves that it was a chicken and egg problem. Like, we didn't believe that no one wanted to shop online. We believed that there were no good e-commerce companies. And if there were a good e-commerce service that serviced their customers well, people would shop online. People told us this argument, you know, that Singaporeans love going shopping, it's a family event, and you go to the mall and do that. We didn't really buy it, especially for our products, because a 6-pack of Coke is the same wherever you go, right? It's you know, these are kind of more commodity type products, so you know, we didn't feel like people would enjoy so much the process of shopping. It's more of a chore to do. Another argument that we faced is, you know, everyone says Singapore is so convenient. I very strongly disagree with that. I'm from New York City. There's a grocery store on every other block. That's much more convenient. And yet still in New York City, people buy online. And why do they do that? Because convenience is relative. Something is only convenient until there's something that's more convenient, and then that's the convenience after that. So, you know, that's sort of the reason why we chose Singapore, is because we just didn't buy into these myths that we're debunking now. We believe that, you know, the reason why people weren't shopping online was not because they didn't want to, but because there was no good service, and we tried to change that.
So would you be growing more horizontally or vertically? As in, like, you know, would you be just broadening your SKUs in the grocery sectors, or would you actually delve into one particular vertical, for example, you know, baby goods, you know, because if you look at the baby market here, I mean, there's lots of babies in Singapore. So, you know, in China, for example, you know, there's like 10 or 20 different e-commerce sites just catering on the baby market alone. They sell strollers, diapers, wipes, you know, whatever you need. And, you know, that was a lifesaver because, you know, I'm a full-time worker, but a part-time mother, and I have no time to go to the stores to buy all these things. And I was shocked, in Singapore there's no such site that actually offers everything that a mother could possibly need.
It's true. That's a very attractive category. It's not only, I think one of the reasons why it's so attractive is because, if we're talking about the baby category for people who can hear, is because there's a couple times in your life where it's easier to change people's behavior. When you have kids, that's one of them. Anyone who has kids knows that going to the store becomes even more of a pain. So it's easier to get them to convert to e-commerce at that stage. So I think that's another reason why it's so attractive. The customer acquisition and word of mouth between young mothers is also very strong. Diapers.com in the US, for example, grew from 0 to, you know, whatever, 350 million, and sold to Amazon a couple of years ago for $500 million, starting off with just selling diapers and building that trust with the customer who were young moms. And now they sell toys and all kinds of other things that they've sort of leveraged that relationship with. So yeah, we will likely go into other categories, but we think this was a good category to start with because the market is so big, even in Singapore.
Okay, there's a question from a gentleman at the back.
Yes, my question is about your customers. So, are you monitoring any metric that tells you more or less what is your clientele in terms of expats, local, if your clients have a car, so how are they living condo, big streets?
Yeah, so the question was, what is our customer demographic or profile. So we initially catered the product selection that we started off with in Redmart towards expats. We actually thought that they would be early adopters since they're used to this type of service in their home country. But we were pleasantly surprised to see the local population adopting very quickly, and actually that's our fastest growing segment. Now it's the majority. So we had to shift our strategy pretty quickly and start, telling our merchandising team to start sourcing more local products. So you see a lot more of those going on the site these days. Obviously, that was always the goal because Singapore, is a very, very small market if you only go for expat, but we just didn't think it would happen that quickly. So I'd say, in terms of demographics, it's probably mostly women, 25 to 45. Like I said, about, just over half local, rest are expats. We also have sort of the dual income, busy professional kind of contingent that finds it hard to find time to go to the grocery store. And we have that's why we have delivery slots up until 10 p.m. so they can order and be home. And then we have a lot of the young mother, which is why the baby category is also attractive for us. They buy diapers, but they find it hard to go to the grocery store. Yeah.
Okay, we have one final question from Son.
I'm very impressed with the way you build and engineer them. I mean, can you tell us how did you convince those talented guys to join you? You draw a dream that you're going to be the next billion company, or you use your background with other success? And how did you build a team? How did you attract other people to join you?
Yeah. So the question was, how did we build out our tech team? So, like I said, we actually, I found, I spend a lot of time really working on our job profiles, and we've gotten most of our key employees actually from LinkedIn. Todd Curry, who is the director of marketing at eBay, in San Francisco. I also found him through LinkedIn. He's a startup veteran. Rajesh, like I said, from Bubble Motion, a Sequoia-backed company, from LinkedIn. So I spend a lot of time writing up a profile. It's pretty much like marketing your company, right? So I try to make it sound like the best job ever. And the important thing there is just knowing what the motivation is. Like I said, for that job, I use phrases like, we're looking for very passionate, creative individuals who, just people who have a passion to create. You're coming in at the early stages, it's basically a blank slate. You're gonna build something from scratch. Engineers, especially those who have ever worked in something where they're working with legacy systems, they sort of really appreciate the opportunity to build it exactly how they want to build it, have a lot of input in that process. So that has been kind of, I think, the most attractive thing we can offer at Redmart. Then, it helps getting that first person to be very talented like Rajesh is. People want to learn, engineers also want to learn from the best, right? And, Rajesh, even though he's CTO, basically coded most of our back-end e-commerce platform himself. And everyone he shows it to is like, oh my God, this is unbelievably fast. And we have Mugun, who built our iPhone app, who wrote the best-selling book in the world on iOS development, published by Wiley. He was attracted to work with us because he saw what Rajesh had built, and he thought he could learn from Rajesh. And yeah, that's been kind of what I've seen as the trend, is people that really want to learn, want to be with someone like him. So getting that third person at the top being very strong, and having the rest of the team respect his technical abilities is really important.
Okay, before I wrap up for the night.
We have time for the sponsor venue, right? Hi, Rai. Can you come?
Sorry. we're gonna invite Ray from the Cole to give us a few words.
Except working with